Okay. So first of all, we are going to start with. Yes, we can hear you. You're welcome, sir.
Okay, thank you.
You can hear you, sir. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, our distinguished speaker. Okay, I just think before you do the introduction, let me just give a welcome quickly. And I'm quite happy that we are here. I can see Barrister Tuji and Malam Form. Thank you very much for granting this webinar. The Companies and Other Matters Act 2020, the amendments have long been expected. Actually, in 2018, the National Assembly passed this law, but it was not assented to by the president because there were some other issues, some issues that were not that we have issues about. But this newly enacted act tends to introduce a lot of efficiency in the execution and regulation of corporate vehicles. It reduces significantly the compliance burden on small and medium enterprises so that they can enhance transparency and stakeholders' engagement so that we can overall promote a very friendly business climate. Lead Resources, as part of a solutions architecture company, as part of the services to particularly small and medium enterprises, didn't it fit, just like Robert has said, to inform SMEs about the conveniences and the facilities and the advantages of this new law. This is why this webinar has been put together. And I think this is going to be a very enabling and very enlightening session. We have invited very two distinguished legal practitioners, and I think they will, from various perspectives, show us what needs to be done. Without too much ado, and without wasting so much of our time, I am pleased to welcome you today, and I think we have a very exciting session. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We are very delighted that you could join us, at least to give the opening remarks. Thank you. So, to start, I'm going to introduce the guest speakers, starting from the host, he just finished speaking. So for those of us that don't have access to the chat box, please, Marcellus, can you help us repost the profiles of the guest speakers, starting with the Honorable Kende Shugun, posting in the chat box.
Well, once you post it, I think it should just
it should appear.
So that you can save time. Just post it. And then introduce more the speakers and not
all right.
Not me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So the first speaker is Barrister Adetunji Bobiaku. He is the managing partner of Tunji Bobiaku and Associates Legal Practitioners, Ikeja, Lagos. He's a legal practitioner and business enthusiast who has over 25 years of legal expertise and experience built around commercial corporate legal practice, both home and abroad. His areas of expertise in law and business include corporate governance compliance, project finance and foreign direct investments, banking, taxation, contracts, employment, real property, and intellectual property. He has worked in various capacities, such as being the consultant on citizens' rights to the governor of Ogun State and the advisor to the Presidential Advisory Committee on National Dialogue. He has a mission to provide legal solutions to individuals and organizations in order that they may easily navigate the tricky challenges of legal and corporate compliance in their businesses and avoid the legal pitfalls that may form a distraction and stumbling block to their growth, development, and profitability. All right. So he's going to be speaking with us from 12:20 on the issues around the compliance of the CAMA 2020 law for entrepreneurs. When I say entrepreneurs, I'm referring to people starting from startups, those that are just starting, and small and medium scale enterprises, people that run those businesses, small, medium scale, and then even big organizations. Right. So if you have a business or you're planning to have a business, you really need this webinar to understand how the CAMA law affects you and how to navigate it. So without much ado, I think I will invite Barrister Tunji Bobiaku to the podium. Will be speaking to us for the next 35 minutes. If you have any questions, kindly note them down. We are going to have the opportunity to ask before the end of the webinar, after the second speaker. Thank you very much. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, delegates. Hello, sir. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to Lead Resources for organizing this webinar. Thank you, delegates, for attending. My name is Adetunji Obaku, as Mr. Albert has kindly introduced me. The topic for today is the understanding of CAMA, Company and Allied Matters Act 2020 for entrepreneurs. This is a repeal of the Company and Allied Matters Act 1990, which came into force 30 years ago. And according to the Corporate Affairs Commission, the aims and objectives of this new law is to, amongst other things, firstly, to ease the starting and growing of businesses in Nigeria. Secondly, to give more appropriate regulation of MSMEs and reduce the threshold and entry barriers to this category of businesses. Thirdly, to enhance transparency and shareholder engagement. Number 4, to align regulatory framework with international best practices and to ensure competitiveness of our companies and efficiency. Also, to make companies have a corporate standard that will make Nigeria a destination of choice by attaining, attracting, growing, and retaining investments. There is no business that will succeed without investment from funds from investors. The CAMA 2020 is the law that is enacted for company regulation in Nigeria, and its purpose is to enable businesses to run properly based on the principle of freedom of contract. Essentially, for any business to be able to run, it has to be able to contract freely with buyers, sellers, or whoever they may be their target audience. Secondly, it provides regulations to ensure certainty in the rules and regulations of companies. It is essential that companies know that if they're able to do business, these are the requirements to be able to do business. It cannot be changed arbitrarily. That is why it has taken them 30 years to be able to amend this law. You cannot be shifting the goalposts as companies come into existence because their success is based on certainty. Now that we have discussed the purpose of company law and the aims and objectives of the Company and Allied Matters Act 2020, we can now look at how entrepreneurs can benefit from this new regulation. What are the new changes that will assist companies and especially small businesses to be able to succeed with these new regulations? What is the purpose of the regulation? How does it affect small companies? How can it benefit small companies? How can it make them more efficient? How can it help them to attract funding? How can it help them to navigate the very, very difficult terrain of running a business? So, one of the things that the new CAMA 2020 has done is that before, it was essential that all companies must have a common seal. Now, by virtue of Section 98 of CAMA 2020, the common seal is no longer mandatory for a company to have a common seal. And companies can now have the sole discretion to choose whether or not to have one. Before, if you don't have a common seal, any transaction you do that you do not append a common seal makes it difficult for it to be valid. And what that basically means is that it slows down your ability to do business. But if it is no longer required, any transaction you need to do based on whatever exigencies or urgency required, you can just go ahead and transact. You don't need to start waiting until your seal has been attached to any documentation or agreement before you can proceed. Secondly, the authentication via electronic signature. CAMA 2020 now provides that an electronic signature is deemed to satisfy the requirements for signing, and that the register of transfers shall include electronic registers. Now, before, you cannot sign online and say that's a signature. It has to be on a paper, and then you now have to sign it. But by virtue of what has been enacted now, even if it is online by email or WhatsApp or whatever electronic means that you are transacting, if you can append your electronic signature, it is deemed the same as you putting a piece of paper and signing. Additionally, a document or proceeding requiring authentication by a company may be signed by a director, secretary, or other authorized officer of the company, and need not be signed by deed, unless otherwise specifically required by CAMA 2020. What this means is that before, for any document to be valid, sometimes the requirement is that 2 directors must sign. And now, assuming the 2 directors are not in the same place, or it is not convenient for them to sign at the same time, what CAMA now does is that CAMA now allows any of these authorized officers of the company to be able to sign on behalf of the company. So it ensures ease of business, it facilitates ease of business, it makes it faster, less cumbersome, and also it gives confidence that if you want to do a transaction, you don't necessarily have to convene everybody in the same place before you can do it. Now, e-meetings. Now, section 240, subsection 2 of CAMA 2020. Private companies are now permitted to hold general meetings virtually. Before, you cannot hold meetings via Zoom, via Google, via Microsoft. You have to physically be in the same place. And then you now need to sign a register of attendance. You now need to issue a communique. Then there has to be minutes of the meeting. All these are very cumbersome. If you are now allowed to do this online, it makes it faster. And also, to even issue Hello, I'm sorry, I think we lost connection there. Can you hear me?
Don't hear you, sir.
Okay. Yes, sir, we can hear you. You can continue.
Okay, I think we lost connection for a minute. So, in terms of notice of meeting, prior to now, you need to issue a written notice to all the eligible members of the meeting at least a certain period of time before the date of the meeting. But now, via electronic means, it makes it easier and faster. You don't necessarily have to go and deliver a letter by paper. You can actually issue it electronically, WhatsApp, email, or any other means that is faster and can confirm delivery. So it makes it easier to be able to organize a meeting at short notice. Also, from what has been developed now via CAMA 2020, small companies before they had the burden of annual returns, whether or not your company is running. Even company that you just registered for the purpose of maybe you are hoping that a business will come up and you use it for that purpose, and the business has all come up, you now have the burden of getting a chartered accountant to do annual return, to file it. All those things are cumbersome. Now, CAMA, by virtue of Section 402, now makes it exempt for small companies. You do not necessarily need to issue an audited report if your company has not been actively in business. So it saves a lot of stress, it saves a lot of difficulty, and a lot of expenses as well. Now, one very important new feature of CAMA 2020 is that prior to now, one person cannot be a director, one person cannot be a shareholder of a company. Now, a single person shareholder company can be formed. We all know the challenges of partnership. Once you need somebody before you can sign, once you need somebody before you can register, you are putting your destiny in the hands of two people rather than one. In this instance now, you can hold your destiny in your own hands. You can be a single director. You can be a single shareholder. That is what Section 18 of CAMA 2020 has provided for. And basically what it says is that it excludes small companies only. Small companies, I guess that is the companies that we are all looking at. Small and medium scale enterprises, small companies, single business holders, business name owners, small companies that are not huge corporations. It allows them to have a single director and a single shareholder. This is very, very important. It has never been in the history of company law in Nigeria. It makes it now a good opportunity for companies to be able, for individuals who have a dream of the company, to not have to involve somebody else who they will not need to be called upon to sign at every turn. Before they can do anything, they have to call him. Before they can sign for any disbursement, they have to call him. They have to do minutes of meeting with him. So it eases the burden of transaction. Also, registration of new companies now requires only a statement of compliance by the director that is registering it. Before, you needed a statutory declaration of compliance by a legal practitioner. It has made it easier to set up a new company. Before, you actually need to get a legal practitioner in order to do it. However, it is advisable that you get a legal practitioner because of the complexity of company formation, so that you do not make mistakes of your incorporation. But it is an option. It is no longer mandatory. Now, the appointment of a company secretary is no longer mandatory as well. Since you can now be a one-man company, you don't need to appoint a company secretary, which means it makes it easier for you to set up a company. If you have to appoint a company secretary, it means that you have to look for somebody who is trustworthy, somebody who is available, somebody who may need to pay a certain amount of funds to be able to assist you in the running of your company. Now, the benefits of CAMA is that the former law was repealed for the purpose of making it easier to promote businesses in Nigeria. Majority of the businesses are small companies, which are entrepreneurs. Some of these advantages of this new law is that it has created an avenue. Sometimes with CAMA, you have disputes. Maybe they are saying you did not file your return on time. Maybe they are fining you for one thing or the other. Or maybe they're making it difficult or not anything from CAMA and they're delaying. It has created a commission that allows for pre-action notice before you sue. We all know that litigation is time-consuming and expensive. Now, with CAC, they have created a pre-action notice, which means that if you have any dispute with CAC, you just need to write them and say you have this dispute, and if they are able to resolve it, which they are actively working towards, in order to avoid litigation, they will resolve it for you. So it makes it easier for you to deal with CAC. Before, if you go and get a lawyer, they may not necessarily be quick in responding to you. Now, in order to also assist and encourage small businesses, the new law has allowed for the board of the CAC to include a representative of the small and medium scale enterprises, so that you now have a voice in the small and medium scale enterprises. Before, it was CAC doing what they want to do on behalf of the government. Now, you have a representative that is there, so that anything that relates to the interest of small and medium scale enterprises, you can write to your representative, just like in government where you have a representative, maybe House of Rep member or a senator. You can write to them and say, okay, this situation on CAC is not agreeable, we are not happy with this, or we want you to lobby us for this, so that our businesses can run better. So that representative is there, and it is a representative of small and medium scale enterprises, and small businesses are the one that will vote for who will be put there to represent them. Another thing that it has done is that by virtue of the way it has standardized the operation of companies, it has made it now easier for companies to be able to access domestic and international funds. Most foreign organizations, if you don't have good corporate governance, which is not streamlined in the way that CAMA 2020 is trying to do, even if you apply, they will never give you funds. So, but if CAMA has been able to streamline all your engagements from day one, maybe via point of registration or point of compliance as you're going along, unwittingly, what you have done is that you have made yourself eligible for international funding. So you now say you want to do a business, you want a company from abroad to be able to loan money or a fund from abroad to invest in your company through foreign direct investment. The compliance requirements that they need in order to be able to give you money has already been incorporated in this new law, CAMA 2020. It also provides for reputational credibility and integrity. Basically, what this means is that if you are as a company, you own a company, and then you're expecting people to take you serious, but your organization is not properly structured, it will not happen. What essentially happens is that the CAMA 2020, by virtue of the provisions and compliance by companies, has made them to be in a position whereby when people look at you from the outside as a company, they give you credibility if you have not given them reason to think otherwise. Which means that before, if, for example, if you have a one-man business that is not registered, or a one-man business that is not a registered business, and you now go to a bank and say you want to borrow money, it's very likely they will not accede to your request. Not that they will never, but it's not likely. Now, by virtue of the structures put in place by CAMA 2020, the organization, the banks, the businesses you want to interact with, the customers you are looking at, they have put in organizational structures for compliance that will make your company more appealing to them to do business. That's actually what it means. So, and also in case of a single person shareholder directorship company, which is possibly the single most important change that CAMA 2020 has brought, which is that now one person can own a company, one person can be shareholder of a company. It affords that company a lot of benefits, which we as entrepreneurs can take advantage of. One is that it is recognized as a corporate legal personality, as distinct from the owner. How does this help us? I'll tell you. Essentially, what it means is that if you have a company and you now transact business and your company is worth maybe 5 million, and the business you are doing has, for whatever reason, has an issue, it is only the 5 million that the company is worth that anybody can come after and say they want to get back their money from you, because businesses can run into problems. They cannot come and take your personal belongings. You have the veil of incorporation, as there's a popular case, Solomon and Solomon, which has been in English law and later transferred to Nigerian law for over a century now. Basically, what it means is that a company is distinct legal personality from the owner. You cannot say because the company owes you money, you now go to the person's house and you now go and take the person's house or property. This is very important for businesses. It gives you confidence to be able to do business without risking your personal belongings. And also, the company can own property separately, and the company can also sue and be sued separately. That also flows from the things I've said earlier. Solomon and Solomon says that a corporate legal personality is distinct from the owner. Therefore, any losses or benefits is that of the company, not the owner. You are safe and secure in your own personal belongings. Nobody can come after you for your personal belongings unless there is any other reason to believe that maybe fraud or whatever that may be involved. So CAMA for 2020 has laid the foundation for the development, growth, and success of private companies I think possibly for the next 30 years, because what it has done, the last repeal was done 30 years ago, 1990. The next 30 years is all about electronic commerce and freedom of transaction and openness in transaction and also confidence in transaction. So CAMA 2020, I believe, is beneficial to entrepreneurs. It has made it easier to do business. It has shielded them from unnecessary obstacles and gridlocks that we have experienced over time in implementation of their businesses. And it has also opened up other business avenues that they can use to raise funds and develop themselves, and also to source funds. So essentially, that is the background and the benefits of CAMA 2020. Thank you for listening.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. You have done justice to that, and you have really simplified the law to us. You know, many people, even myself included, when we see the CAMA Law, that is the PDF or maybe the hard copy itself, it looks like as if it is a Spanish, because the terms there are either too big or too confusing for us, but they have broken it down and they have made it very, very simplified for us. We thank you very much for that, and we appreciate you for your time. So I don't know if anyone has questions, kindly write down your questions, and we are going to deal with them after this program. Okay. All right. So I would like to recognize, before we move on to the next speaker, I would like to recognize some of us that are here that are associate solutions architects with us at the resources. I can see Ugochukwu, I can see Marcellus, I can see Tomiwa, and I can see Francis Itwa, Tobiloba, Simeon. You're all welcome. And Paul, you're welcome. So the next speaker will be with us shortly. So I'll give him some time to get set. And while that is happening, I would like to just have a recap of what the first speaker just said, so that we truly understand the reason behind this law and how it helps us. Okay, now you have to understand that the CAMA Law, the first, like the speaker said, the last CAMA Law we had was enacted 30 years ago in 1990. All right. So that CAMA Law, that 1990 CAMA, it wasn't a law, it was an act, CAMA Act 1990. It was considered an improved version.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Of the repealed Companies Act of 1968. Hello, Mr. Kennedy, you want to say something?
Didn't get enough.
Sorry, your audio is not very clear. Okay, all right, let's continue. So for your information, the CAMA Law of 2020 is made up of 870 sections, all right, and it is divided into 7 parts, all right. Part A provides for composition of the Corporate Affairs Commission, that is the CAC, we all know. Part B provides for the incorporation of companies. Part C deals with the establishment of limited liability partnerships. Part D provides for limited partnerships. Part E provides for registration of business names. Part F provides for registration of incorporated trustees. Part G deals with general provisions and the establishment of administrative proceedings. So that is just a summary of the Company and Allied Matters Law.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, though it's breaking. We can hear you now. Can you come again? All right. Okay. Let's continue. I just want to bring to your notice some facts and some did you know from the CAMA Law. All right. As I was saying, there are 7 parts and it's made up of 870 sections. Okay. Now, despite its apparent intentions, CAMA Law 2020 was met with public outcry. I'm sure we all know that there are certain aspects of the law that was being challenged by some certain groups, especially the Christian Association of Nigeria. So I believe during the question and answer session, our barristers are going to help us to answer questions around that aspect and how what exactly is going on. But from our own understanding, from our own research, according to section 863, it says a person or an association in Nigeria shall not carry on business in Nigeria as a company, limited liability partnership, limited company, or under a business name without being duly registered under this act. This is punishable on conviction to a fine. Similarly, section 19 states that no association or partnerships of more than 20 persons shall be formed for the purpose of carrying out on a business for profits or gain without registration of the company under the act, right? So section 863 criminalizes carrying out business as a company without being registered, while section 19 stands against businesses of over 20 persons without registration. So those are just some of the areas that we should know. And then the barrister Tunji has given us lots of benefits of the law. And from our own end, we have also compiled a lot of them. There are over more than 10 benefits that we are able to compile from our end. So we are going to, before the end of the webinar, we are going to drop a link. We have published it on our blog on leresources.com.ng. So you can look it up for yourself and then learn some things. You know, one thing with knowledge is that once you know something, you are empowered, okay? You're going to be like an authority in the midst of your peers. So if not for any other thing, just learn this thing and know them so that you can be able to educate your friends who are also entrepreneurs. So the link will be dropped in the chat box. You can click on it and read up the blog post on our Live Resources website, all right? And then for those of you that are here, the recording of this meeting will be sent to you via email, so they can always have access to it. And we also intend to send you a full copy of the PDF copy of the law, so that you can always make reference to it at any point in time. Okay, thank you very much. So, Barrister Manafon, are you set to start?
Is it set? Oh, hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Let me just commend also Barrister Abibaku for a job well done, and he has simplified what appears to be a very complicated process when you look at the number of pages and the number of sections. I'd just like to add one or two things, particularly maybe before the other barrister also comes on, about the benefits of registration, particularly at this time, post-COVID, for SMEs. One is the fact that as part of the economic sustainability plan of the federal government, a series of incentives are being given to small and medium enterprises, one of which is the survivor fund, which could be which could be some funds being given to SMEs, those who are payroll for closing down, quite a lot of things like that. And one of the criteria for accessing this fund is proper registration. So it is important for anybody that is trying to do business, startups or entrepreneurs that are planning to grow, should recognize that they won't be recognized to participate in that fund as entrepreneurs if they are not registered. And now they have also made, and that's what the government is doing, that they have also made registration also very easy, either as a business name or as a limited partnership or even as a company. That's one. I'm also finding out that states now are now being encouraged to patronize SMEs. A significant percentage of their contracts is now supposed to be given to SMEs. And quite in the past 1 or 2 weeks, I've been able to see the state government conducting some webinars like this, informing SMEs on how they can participate in executing government contracts. But one of the criteria for participation of any enterprise or any is to actually to already be registered as a company. So that is one. The other one is also in that participation, there's also procurement. Last week also, I attended a webinar by the state government around public procurement and SMEs. But the passport, really, for anybody, whatever you are doing, government is the biggest spender. Whatever service or that's very big. So if we are thinking about renting services to government, they are now creating what I call an open and transparent environment so that everybody will have access. It's not about from political leaning or whatever. Once you are registered and you can qualify and you understand that that project is going on, you can actually bid for it. It then begins to define clearly the kind of capacities and competencies that SMEs must have. You can't just be running and thinking that people will come past you. But you must be able to, once you are doing it so well, you must be able to see the opportunities that are available in government. But the passport for that is that as a businessman, you need to be registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission. That is what this CAMA 2020 has made so easy, so that everybody can participate, particularly to recover from this COVID-19 pandemic that we're just going through. Thank you very much. Just to have some current reality and context to what is the narrative and discussion. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. I think in summary, he is saying that if you're an entrepreneur, it is important that you get your business registered so that you can have access to certain palliatives and government relief funds that have been made available for entrepreneurs. And he has also said that the government is trying to restructure in such a way that the majority of the state's contracts have to be given to entrepreneurs. So you, as a business owner, if you have what it takes to carry out any government contracts, you have the right to apply for any contract that is being made available. That's to bid for it. And for you to do that, your business has to be registered. I think the next guest facilitator, Mr. Barrister Eman Amfon, will shed more light on that, how business registration can help you mitigate risk as an entrepreneur, especially under the CAMA 2020 law. All right, so I think Barrister Eman Amfon is ready, but before he comes on board, I'm going to officially introduce him to us. For those of you that have access to the chat box, just look at the chat box. I'm going to be posting his profile there so you can all know the capacity of the people we have on board here. All right, I just posted it. So, Barrister Eman Amfon Umana, LLB, Horns University of Uyo, Nigeria. BL, Horns Nigeria Law School, Abuja, Nigeria, is a legal officer at ICO Insurance PLC who performs core secretariat functions and offers legal advice across all departments of the organizations on issues of policy, regulations, contract agreements, labor, fraud, and misrepresentation, etc. He has worked in various capacities in a number of law firms such as White Dove Solicitors and Bequie and Associates. He is a member of Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, a designated compliance professional of Compliance Institute of Nigeria, CIN, and a member of Chartered Insurance Institute of Nigeria, CIIN. He is also certified in corporate insurance fraud prevention and data governance. He is adept in extensive research and possesses an uncanny ability to communicate wisdom to individuals, organizations, and societies. Hence, he makes his skill and talent in offering legal advice to startups on corporate services, corporate governance, insurance, and compliance. Ladies and gentlemen, join me as I welcome Barrister Eman Amfon Umana to the podium. You're welcome, sir. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm being heard. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much once again. Big appreciation. Webinar. senior colleague, every one of you that.
Sorry, your audio is not very clear. It's on and off.
Hello?
Yeah, it's very clear now.
Okay. So I am actually appreciating all those that have found time to attend this seminar, this webinar. Let us move straight into the business of the day. Okay, understanding CAMA 2020 for entrepreneurs. My colleague has actually done justice to the first segment regarding the benefits of CAMA 2020 to entrepreneurs. But I believe my screen is visible to all.
Yes, you can see your screen.
Okay, so I'll be taking the second lap, which has to do with strengthening SMEs through insurance and legal risk management, as well as insurance as a risk transfer mechanism for growth of startups. Speaking about business insurance services. Okay, so the first we're looking at is how do we strengthen SMEs? We know that CAMA has come to make it easy for businesses, especially, and this wouldn't have come at a better time like this. I should call it the post-COVID era, and trying to make things easier. But going forward, it's beyond just making it easy. There's another part of business which most people fail to take cognizance of, which is the fact that every business has risk. Yes, we know it. Everything is risky, but how deep is this risk? What is the risk that this CAMA 20 will bring forward to strengthen the ease of doing business in Nigeria? So first, in making this very assimilatable, we need to understand what is even insurance. What is insurance? People hear of insurance. People have different perceptions of insurance. But is it everybody that actually understands what insurance is all about? I've made it very simple here. If you can see the slide, I believe you do, that it's simply a contract between an insurer and an insured, wherein the insurer promises to cover the risk of the insured for a consideration called premium. To make it easy, every SME that it has come up or is hoping to come up in doing business will always face one form of risk or the other. Now, this risk cannot be borne alone by the SME owner, the proprietor, or the director of that company. There is actually an avenue for cover, and that is where insurance comes in. And when insurance comes in, they cover your risk, and in return, the consideration that is being paid is the premium. And then let's even understand what SMEs are. We keep hearing SMEs. Okay, we know the full meaning, but what are the threshold that qualifies an SME? We find businesses with turnover of less than 100 million. 100 million is large, especially in this the economy that we are in. So if you have a turnover of 100 million in a year, in quotes, it's a big business. But this statistics is gotten from the CBN website, from one of their materials. So it's actually an authority for them to give this cap to what qualifies as an SME. And then if you have less than 300 employees, you're an SME less than 300 employees. Studies by the International Financial Corporation shows that approximately 96% of Nigerian businesses are SMEs, compared to the 53% in the US and 65% in Europe. SMEs represent about of the manufacturing sector in terms of enterprises. So in Nigeria, the bulk of the businesses is SME. Therefore, as much as these SMEs are, and the more the fact that there are more, there is hope for them to come up, and the fact that CAMA has now made it easy for them to be sustained and for more to spring up, that means we have a larger pool of risk in our hands to cater for. So it's not just about setting up an SME and then accessing fund and taking the benefits of CAMA. You also know that once you dip your hands into business, you are dipping your hand into a pool of risk as well, and that is why this topic is very necessary at this point. So we now look at another aspect: legal risk. What is legal risk? Legal risk simply means the damage or loss to reputation or finances as a result of your non-compliance with laws, rules, or principles that govern a business within a defined entity. Of course, where there is no law, there is bound to be chaos. So even when CAMA has come to make SMEs easy to start and business to thrive, that means, in as much as this is good, however, there are laws, there are rules, there are regulations which these SMEs still need to comply, even at the barest minimum, in order not to run the risk of negligence, of financial loss, of reputational loss. Take, for instance, CAMA is encouraging more SMEs, but does not stress the fact that they need to be registered. That means people can, start up any business without any name. In Nigeria, we are very, 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 very culpable for that. We have thousands of businesses that are not registered. And of course, when this happens, there's potency for fraud, there's potency for reputational damage, there's potency for people's businesses to be mimicked or to be cloned, or we call it passing off in law. That means you tomorrow you can just open a shop somewhere and you put their Google and everything looks very cozy, and they are misrepresenting as if you are Google. Meanwhile, not being registered, you are not Google. You get, and then once there is negligence, once there is a breach of contract, once there is fraud, the person that will take the bulk of that reputational damage is the actual business that was registered. Okay, so it will take a lot of back and forth for you to now distinguish that you are not the one that did that. So even as a registered entity, you are exposed to legal risk if you are not properly registered. And even when you are registered, you don't take into cognizance the laid down principles and laws which you need to thrive and operate in the economy. And then the basic source of a legal risk are contractual. Of course, when you enter into a contract, there's a possibility that the contract would sell smoothly. There's also a possibility that contract there will be a breach, or it may be frustrated. Something could happen. COVID could come in just like it came in a few months back, and people could not make do their promises. That's a legal risk. So if as an SME you don't open your mind up to these things, it's sad, because when it hits, it may be very, very unexpected, and it may be very damaging. Again, is litigation. Yes, you are an SME, but there is always a chance that you will run into problem. Nobody wishes to have contract breach or to be sued. But once you are operating in a business, there's a duty of care that you owe to everybody. Yeah, you owe a duty of care to your customers, to your suppliers, to even the neighbors within your premises. So once these activities are going on, there is bound to be litigation when one party or the other is aggrieved over your activities. Maybe you supply the wrong good unknowingly. Maybe there is an explosion in your place. People could sue you to recover what that explosion had damaged. These are all part of legal risk. So for you to understand what legal risks are, simply ask, will what I am doing cause harm to another person, such that if I am being proceeded against, it's recognizable in law? If there is a loss, if there is a reputational damage for me not doing a certain thing, are there implications in law? So if there are implications in law, that means that is a legal risk. And then to be more snappy, regulations too. When there are regulations from the regulators, whether in the banking industry, insurance, manufacturing, pharmaceutical, that's we are talking about NAFDAC now, Manufacturer Association, Standard Organization of Nigeria. All these entities have regulations regulating these SMEs. Now, once an SME falls foul of this regulation, they stand the risk of it either being delicensed or suspended, or a fine being put up against that SME. And then we have structural changes. For example, once there is a new law, as sweeping as CAMA 2020 is, there is bound to be changes in structure, one way or the other, not just applicable to CAMA, but any other law meant for businesses in general, in fact, in life generally. Once there is a sweeping legislation, there is a corresponding structural change that will take place. And this, of course, is backed up by law. So these are also risk possibilities too. For instance, businesses that are already in existence, let's say, for instance, companies, maybe a certain entrepreneur has decided to put in his friend who, just for compliance sake, the former law just required 2 persons. So he just got a friend to open a company. And then with this new law, I think he feels he needs to send him off. He needs to send the friend off so that he can be the only person. That is a structure being altered in a way. And again, prior to CAMA 2020, we only had 3 recognizable entities. That is business names, limited liability companies in its different shades, and then the incorporated trustee. But now the new CAMA now brings in limited partnership and limited liability partnership. So businesses may actually also have a structural change in order to comply with this new legislation. However, it might not be a smooth sell. So there are also implications when this happens. There's risk of litigation. So these sources of legal risk are intertwined to an extent. All right, let's move straight to legal risk management. Of course, when you know there's a legal risk, how do you manage it? But when we discuss risk management and generally, what are risks? Let's even start there. Risks are just simply possibility for an unforeseen circumstances that may cause loss. That's just a simple definition of risk. Unforeseen circumstances that may cause loss. So now, how do you even identify risk? Or how do you manage risk? You cannot manage what you've not identified. You must have identified the risk. You must have analyzed it. You must have evaluated it to the extent that, okay, what am I likely to lose? Will I lose 10 million if I don't do it? Will I lose 1,000 if I don't do it? Even in our daily lives, you want to go to Victoria Island, maybe you have an option of using a boat and you get there earlier, or you have the option of using a bike. Let's assume it was still permitted. Of course, you weigh the risk. So that's what evaluation. Okay, if I use bike, I will get there earlier. But what's the cost implication? What if, God forbid, there's an accident? If I use the boat, so you try to. This is what risk evaluation is. What if I do this or I don't do this? What am I likely to lose? And after your evaluation, you now determine how you get it controlled. So even as an SME, as small as it may be, you have to identify what are the risks peculiar to you. You analyze them, at least in the barest form, in its people will say the layman's language. You value it. You look at it maybe vis-a-vis with another professional to see, okay, what do I stand to lose and what will be the impact on my business. And then, of course, if you know you cannot bear it so much, that gets to the risk being controlled. So when you identify, you analyze, and evaluate what next you and attempting to control a risk as far as this webinar is concerned, we are going to look at insurance is a means of risk control. And of course, when you control something, at times you have to review those measures. So let's go into insurance as a risk transfer mechanism for a growth of startups. Now, I said that insurance, just like any other area of contract, is regulated by law and principle. Some law prescribes compulsory insurance, while others are elective or optional. And the primary legislation for insurance is the Insurance Act of 2003. Then we also have the NICOM Act creating the primary regulator. Let's look at few compulsory insurance. We have the motor insurance, builders insurance, occupiers liability, health insurance, employers liability, professional indemnity. Now, no matter how hello, I believe am I being heard?
Hello, yes, sir, you can hear you. Go on.
Okay. So the remark I wish to make on this slide is no matter how small your SME may be today, there's always possibility that is going to grow. Everybody wants what he is doing to grow. So one way or the other, the SME you are doing will have this compulsory insurance pop up during your activities at one point or the other. So you need to understand which of these are compulsory, which of these are optional. For example, if you are starting semi that involves the transport system, of course you must get your car insurance, maybe a third party, which is the minimum requirement, third party expensive. That is if from that. Extent of.
Sorry, sir, you're not very audible again. Can
Hello?
you push the mic closer?
Yeah, is it better now?
Yes.
Okay. So I said
yeah, it's better.
For SMEs, for example, you want to move into the transport sector. Of course, it is taken for granted that the barest insurance, the lowest level of cover you would seek is the motor insurance cover for the fleet of vehicles that you intend using for your business. If you are going into construction, you have to take up the builder's insurance. So even when you seem not to be in line with this, I'll use the word serious areas of business or a very critical or sensitive area of business. Other areas of business, there are insurance policies which you as an SME may want to make provision for. It's not just enough for you to say it's just a small business, I can't afford it. Of course, but you need to plan for it because you are envisaging growth, and once there's growth, your risk is bound to increase. Okay, I had earlier given the definition of what risk is. Risk simply means unforeseen circumstances that causes a loss. Okay, we now look at types of risk. We hear risk. What are types of risk? Now, what I did was I just decided to mention all of them. Some of them may be subsumed, others some may have it as it's a subset or as a whole, but just go with the way I've enumerated them. Regulatory risk, simply the risk or the loss that you may encounter should you fail to meet the regulatory obligations. So, in as much as CAMA 2020 has come with simplified terms and conditions, I'll use that. Also know that there are also implications for not adhering to it. Okay, so even when they've simplified the steps of company registration and everything, there are still regulations in order for them not to be chaos. Okay, not to be economic chaos or implementation chaos. So These are example of regulatory risk. We have financial and monetary risk. Of course, those ones that will have monetary or financial implication. For example, a fire that gets into your small company, or going to cost you loss. Again, financial risk or monetary risk could be seen from the aspect of fiscal risk. Fiscal as in FISCAL, either your lack of finance or the lack of your proper budgeting, or a play of the interest rates and the similar macroeconomic indices. So these two could play out as your financial or monetary risk. Then we also have foreign exchange risk. Of course, we know what the dollar is holding for us now, and it's actually very unfortunate for some people, and it's fortunate for others. Those that had accumulated dollars, it's playing well for them because naira has crashed and the dollar is increasing, so they can actually cash out to an extent, but it's also not taking a good toll on others. Then we also have cyber security risk. This one is very is very critical at this point in time, because this is an era where everything has gone digital, everything has gone on the various platforms, Microsoft, Zoom, and all of that. And there's always a high tendency for your system to be hacked, your WhatsApp to be hacked, and things like that. So there's also a risk. There's a risk part of it too, in as much as this is now the new trend. Then business continuity risk, business interruption. The simplest of example would be the pandemic period. Businesses were interrupted, and SMEs or companies that did not have any business continuity plan in their profile or in their operation were actually hit hard. But those companies that had a good and robust business continuity plan were even still working. In fact, some businesses even made more money during the pandemic because they were already on the digital space. So the interruption that the COVID-19 brought did not really touch them. So we also have strategic risk, compliance risks. Compliance risk is almost is synonymous with the regulatory risk. We have operational risk, reputational risk. Of course, when your company is being sued or is being fined a heavy fine or is being slammed with licensing order or suspended, of course, your reputation is at risk. Your reputation the reputation of that company is at risk. So even as SMEs, you may really say, well, it's a small business, but it has a tendency to grow. We all want to grow, so you need to know that. Okay, and in fact, this is even more damaging to an SME, because SMEs are already struggling. They are naturally struggling, of course. So while you are struggling to be known, while you are struggling to get the big contracts and the referrals and everything, you cannot stand the chance of having a reputational risk, because that will damage your image to future business partners. In fact, the current one may not even want to refer you. Okay, so SME should even be more wary of this type of risk. And I just decided to add this one: risk of death. Of course, it's inevitable. It's something that every man must face, and it's actually a humble one, but it's a possibility. It's also a possibility. So you take up a transfer mechanism that will try to mitigate this risk. Okay, we move straight to insurance as a transfer tool. We said first you need to identify the risk, you need to evaluate, analyze it, and you need to control it. Now, what are the control measures? Risk can either be avoided, just avoid. Okay, I don't want to go out today. Maybe it's raining or there's so much traffic, and maybe I will risk staying out so late. Okay, not going out. I heard what do they call them? 1 million boys are outside. So you just avoid it. I don't want to do business. poultry business, no, I can't stand it, the birds may die. So just avoid it. I don't want to do it. So that's what avoidance is about. However, you can decide to accept it. All right, whatever, I'll do the business. Whatever it comes, if I lose the money, fine. If I don't, of course, they normally say if you don't take risk, it's a risk itself. So it's always good to take risk. So you can decide to accept it. I'll do it. You can decide to, I want to be a footballer. If it happens, they break my leg, fine. And people travel miles to go and deliver car to their buyers, fly the airplane for businesses, they are taking risk. But in the clear business sense, every action you take, the delivery man that has risked his life to be flying the route of Lagos is taking a risk. So he has accepted it. Just take it. You can only mitigate it. And then you can limit it. Okay, as an SME, you decide to, I'll take the risk, but let's try and limit it. Maybe your employer, you've discovered that one of the greatest risks you are facing as an enterprise is that the workforce that you have are always stealing your items, stealing your this. How do you mitigate or limit it? Okay, put a CCTV camera. So you've limited it, and all of them know. So everybody would keep their hands in their pockets. Okay, and then either you limit or you reduce it. So you try to reduce it, and then you can decide to transfer the risk. You can decide, okay, fine, this is what I've seen as being a risk. Let me transfer it. Let me just transfer that risk, and that is the melting point for this session: risk transfer, insurance as a risk transfer mechanism. How do you now transfer this risk as an SME? Now, I decided to just mention all of them. These are very wide areas, which even 2 hours, 3 hours will not even do justice to it. Each of these means of transfers or policies or insurance areas are very wide. Some of them are industry specific, some of them are general, but I cannot start dwelling on it. Like I said, it's something that maybe will take almost a day and we won't still finish it, because there are pros, the cons, the conditions, the terms, the excesses, the exclusions. But we'll not do that. That's not the purpose of this. This is just to guide, you, and so that plan, which one suits you and which one can you do without. And let me quickly add, insurance pay. I know people don't believe in insurance, but insurance pay. So the two things that you should do is, one, as an SME, no matter how small it is, make it in your budget. Okay, I will set aside so amount every year for insurance, because you may keep doing insurance 5 years. It is the 6th year that you refuse to do. That's when the risk will crystallize. So that's the first advice: set aside a sum for insurance. Then 2, engage a professional who would review the insurance terms with you. Then 3, make sure you choose viable insurance firm. Okay, so types of insurance relevant to SMEs. We have fire and special peril. This is very common. This is very general. You don't know when it may happen. Your staff may be careless. Even you not by your own doing, but you can just forget to off that socket. You can forget to turn off the heater. It can happen in your business premises. It could just be an electrical fault, not by anybody. So it's always good as an SME, you look at this, make a small budget for your fire and special peril. Then you have a business interruption policy. There are businesses that were handsomely paid during this pandemic because of the interruption. Now, what does this cover? It covers you for the money you would have earned had it been you were in business for a certain period. Now, most of these insurance policies are linked to each other. Some of them come together as a combined policy. Some of them come individually, depending on your discussion with the underwriter. When I mean underwriter, is the insurance company. For example, the fire and special peril. Of course, when there's a major fire in your place of work, of course, business is interrupted automatically. So, if you have done an insurance policy, not only would they pay you, remember I said subject to the discussions and the terms and conditions of the policy you have taken with the insurer. The fire and special peril will cover you for the items you had lost, and then the business interruption policy, if it was an addendum to the initial policy, would take care of what would have been your profit, or what would have been your gain, but for the interruption. So that is taken into consideration. Then quickly we move into traders combined. I told you most of these can be combined house, they can work separately. Then we also have employer liability policy. Of course, when you have a certain number of employees, you are expected to take up a policy to cover those people working, especially in the manufacturing and construction, because of course there's higher risk. Of course, when let me quickly add that when a policy is being underwritten, the principle that applies is the extent of risk that the insured is being exposed to. So the premium that someone who works in a construction site or that works in a nuclear plant site, the premium that person will pay is different from the premium that a secretary in an admin office will pay if the person should take up a personal life insurance policy. Why? Because they have different risk threshold. They are not placed on the same. The other person is very high risk. The other one is very low. The secretary has very low risk. Okay, then we move again ahead to group life policy. These policies are, of course, when you have an employee, the Pensions Reform Act 2014, Section 405 requires you to take up a group life policy for your employees. Now, the cover should be at least 3 times of their annual salary. So what do they earn per annum accumulatively? So you multiply that times. That should be the least sum you should assure each and every one of them for, in case the risk of death applies, or permanent disability or anything, the employees would be paid. Now, like I said, these things may look big and may sound, oh, it's for big business. No, this is something you should begin to plan for, and for some of us that are already in it, you begin to tweak your budget and everything to accommodate this, because you don't know when that risk will come. Okay, we have public liability policy. I will rush this one. Public liability, like I initially said, we all owe a duty to members of our neighbor. Of course, the principle of the neighborhood principle is an established principle of law that who is your neighbor when determining negligence. The question that the court asked was, who is your neighbor? So it's not the conventional neighbor who is beside your house. The law now envisages that your neighbor is who will be affected directly or indirectly by your actions. So you may sit somewhere and then you throw a log of wood over your fence. Maybe there's a bush there, so you don't expect anybody to be there. You just throw it and then it lands on a baby's head. Maybe someone came to farm and you didn't know. And that's your neighbor. So who threw it is you. Did you know? You don't need to know. But your action actually affected that person. So this principle applies to insurance too. When you have a premises, you have a duty to both the occupant and those outside. So you take cognizance of these things and take up a policy to cover this kind of risk. We have product liability insurance, which is very common. The product that you sell, the services that you offer, should it injure somebody, you are liable. And if you had an insurance policy as a risk transfer to, that will be covered. Then we also have directors and officers liability. This is meant to cover some officers of the companies in the line of their duty, so that anything they do, anything lawful that they do, but at one way or the other has caused the damage, they can be reimbursed for the cost incidental to those things. It's almost it's not the same with professional indemnity. This is for lawyers, for doctors, engineers, to guide them in discharging their duty. Of course, we offer services, and so some of those services, some of those advice may be injurious one way or the other, not by our doing, but there's an insurance to cover that. And then we have legal expense insurance. Like I said, SMEs, of course, once you get incorporated, you now have a legal personality. So when you have a legal personality, you can be sued and you can sue and be sued. So if you are being sued, you have expenses. Why not? So if you had insurance, the insurance company will pay you for the cost of what you spent defending yourself. But if you did not, your guess is as good as mine. So importance of insurance for startups. Now, having enumerated all these things, what do you think are the importance? Of course, first I identify as trust. People know that okay, you are well structured, no matter how small you have been, but identified and taken priority to certain things. Build trust automatically for your suppliers, for the government, and for all those that have one relation, the stakeholders as a whole. And then from trust is confidence. They'll be confident enough to partner with you, forward up the business totally. This pandemic, of course, is very obvious. I don't even need to stress it. Forwarded up businesses. Why? Because they did not have any risk transfer tool. They will just make the money, eat it, make it, eat it. No business continuity plan, no insurance, nothing. So when this thing came, it hit them, and just for them to fold up. Of course, we have financial and economic protection. Of course, when you set a certain amount for insurance, you are building a certain asset which you protect for that if it happens. Once a big risk comes, it affects a chunk of your reserve. It will definitely affect. But if you are insured part of it, just call on the insurance company, take care of that. So you have this peace of mind that your protection business and then is innovation. Another important station. Once you know that you have something that will protect ideas or dealings, you have to give you time to be more creative. You want to sell more products, you want to have innovation. Well, that's why you have the categories, the spectaculars, and they can do anything. And
when I left, they're asking me if I left by mistake.
No.
Hello. Oh, sorry for that interruption. That's been resolved.
Okay. So
carry on. You have 5 minutes more.
Yes, I'm almost done. So it will give you an avenue to innovate, because the risk that will come with that innovation is bound with protection assets. Your insurance policy also acts as asset. You can transfer it. You can to a borrower, depending on the policy, sign it. 100 million worth of insurance. Take this and give me this. So it's an asset too. Loss mitigation, I don't need to say much about it. The concept of indemnity. The concept of indemnity just simply says, I will return you to the state that you were before. When someone takes up insurance, when a business takes up insurance and crystallizes and pays, payment is meant to turn the business as it was, such that you don't. So I said, notwithstanding other challenges that SMEs may face, the adoption of adequate insurance policies by these businesses can ensure the growth and sustenance of that the business have. Okay. Now, let me quickly add. Of course, of all the capital that a business has, we have the machinery, the cash, liquid cash. We have human capital. Human capital is the most important. So, as an entrepreneur, you yourself, you need to have insurance, because you can't just be sure of tomorrow. You could take up an insurance by way of an endowment plan, but for time, like I said, these things are very deep areas which you can't go into them, but you can decide to take out an endowment plan, and then you can decide to do corporate savings of your house. So I will just conclude by saying that risk is inevitable. Insurance is a necessity for effective risk mitigation. Now, what I'm presenting you just gives you the basic knowledge or the basic insight into risk transfer, legal risk, insurance, and all of that. But my contacts are on the screen in case you need private consultancy in areas of legal, general legal advice, consultancy, company incorporation, corporate services, corporate governance. Like Obot rightly said, I'm a chartered secretary and a corporate governance professional. In areas of legal risk management, insurance, you can reach me on this contact. So thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Barrister Emmanuel Fon. You have really laid emphasis, and you have simplified how entrepreneurs can mitigate, reduce, avoid, transfer their legal risk in business. Thank you very much for that explanation, and I really appreciate. I think by now, lots of us should have questions we would like to ask either the first facilitator or the second facilitator. Okay, so the floor is now open for you to throw in your questions, and then any questions around insurance will be answered by the second speaker, and any question around the benefits of the CAMA Law for entrepreneurs will be answered by the first speaker. If you have any question, kindly raise up your hand so that I can recognize you and tell you to unmute yourself. So you want to ask a question, click on the three dots at the bottom of your screen. You see an option to raise up your hand. You'll be recognized. Questions or comments? Okay, I think people are still trying to think through their questions. All right, I'm going to ask the first speaker, Barrister Tunji, to shed more light on the public outcry that came out as a result of the passing of the 2020 law, CAMA Law, into a 2020 CAMA Law. All right, well, there were public outcries from various quarters, from the CAN, that is Christian Association of Nigeria, that the government is trying to get into the purse of the church, and so many other rumors and stories. In fact, there were calls for the law to be amended. So I'd like to know your take about the public outcry and what you think is actually going on. Is the government right? Is the CAN right? Is the law actually trying to encroach into the church? All right. So we'd like you to shed more light on that, sir.
Okay, thank you for that question, Mr. Albert. Essentially, the public outcry on the issue of trustees and church participation is as a result of the provision that says that the CAC can remove the trustees of a church. A similar provision had been made by government a few years back in relation to banks. I don't know if you remember a provision that gave a time limit on how many years a person can be CEO, chairman of a bank, owner, founder. And I think it was 10 years that after that they needed to hand over. Well, the intention, I can't say whether, I can't say I'm in support or against the legislation, but I'll tell you the perception that caused the outcry. From the government's perspective, essentially what they wanted was more transparency in the affairs of these institutions, because they felt that these organizations were not accountable to the government for taxes. They were not accountable to their members. And they also wanted to, obviously, I think, regulate them in order to see if there was possibility for taxation. That is essentially what it was, from my understanding. From the opinion of these organizations, churches, etc., they view themselves as a charitable organization that is providing a service for the citizenry, the country, the people, and they do a lot of philanthropic work, and therefore they should not be taxable, and they should also allow them to be able to do their God-ordained duties. And in doing that, it will be difficult if they have this influence of government basically auditing them. I think that is the challenge. So what I would say is that, in essence, that outcry was as a result of a perception that government was interfering in what is essentially a philanthropic charitable organization. And from the government's perspective, they were saying, we have all these big churches that essentially we don't know how much they are making, and they have all these big assets. Some have private jets, some have thousands of acres of land. So I don't know if one can say there's anything wrong in the legislation, because there is one particular proviso in the legislation that people have not really taken time to observe. And that is that the major complaint of charitable organizations, churches, and all those other organizations, religious organizations, is that how can government say they want to remove the leadership, either the GO or the overseers? But what the government is saying is that they are not saying they want to remove the owners. What they are saying is that they want to be empowered by law to remove the owners if a court order has been given in that respect, which means that they must have gone to court, there must have been an issue, there must have been a dispute in which the court has now adjudicated on it, and then the court has now decided that they want to, there should be a change of ownership. So that is essentially the outcry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for that explanation. So in essence, the government only wants to make sure that churches are not running in excess, like they're not exploiting the people they're supposed to serve, right?
Well, we can say that, but essentially, I think they want to be able to be a regulatory, they want to be able to regulate their activities. They want to be able to know what is going on. It may not even necessarily be exploitation. They want to be able to tax them appropriately. They want to know how much they are making. They want to be able to have an understanding of what is going on in the organization. And they also want to write that if there is an issue and court now says this leadership of this church are not doing things appropriately, they want to be able to have the right to be able to change it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Please, anyone else has a question for Barrister Tunji or Barrister Manamfon? You can, in case I don't see you raising up your hand, you can unmute yourself and speak. You are free to unmute yourself and speak. Okay, for Barrister Manamfon, I have a question for you. From the types of insurance that are relevant to SMEs, you mentioned fire and special peril, business interruption, and so on and so forth. So I'd like to ask, what are the recommended insurance that are available for businesses that are service-based? For example, someone by the roadside working a POS business, or businesses, or maybe an accountant. Yeah, so those people that are not dealing with goods, that are dealing with services, so there will be no need for product liability insurance. So I'd like to know, what are the recommended insurance that are available for service-based businesses?
Okay, for service-based businesses, recall I mentioned that for certain professional, just like you said, an accountant, depending on the extent of his services, what would be very apt to be a professional indemnity insurance. However, I know where you are heading at when you talk about maybe more POS person. They can go for a theft insurance. There is also an insurance for theft. However, if I'm to speak deeper into that scenario, now I know there are some banks who are operating, having their agency banking spread all over the country. But they've taken up a kind of insurance that covers loss to money, care of those agents. Also taken up some form of insurance for damage to those POS machines. Okay, so at times the underwriter will have to. That's why you need to speak with the underwriter. When the underwriter understands your business, the underwriter can then advise best insurance that suits you. So, like I said, this what I enumerated are not exhaustive. They are not. We have theft insurance, we have glass insurance, we have money insurance, we have travel insurance. Okay, we have sickness and health, health insurance. So we have lots. So it is first for the underwriter to understand what are you doing. Is it a service? Are those services offered by you professionally? Okay, if they're offered professionally, of course, it will be a professional indemnity insurance that will. If it is not, if you are dealing with other smaller issues, for example, if you have a small soap making factory, because product insurance would you have to also take go for fire insurance, because something could trigger a fire in that place. So it is first. That's why you talk to the underwriter first. The underwriter assesses your business, then suggests what is best for you after he has or the company has seen everything about what.
Okay. I think that's very comprehensive. Thank you very much. I think you've done justice to that. Well, finally, I would like to know, I think many people have these questions too, and I think that's maybe the reason behind their being reluctant to pick up an insurance plan. Some of them may wonder what happens if you buy an insurance plan, and in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, that risk does not happen. What will happen to the money, the insurance payments? What happens? Do you have a way to pay it back to the business, or what happens to the money if the risk for which it was being insured does not happen?
Thank you for that question. That question is very it's a typical Nigerian question. Now,
yeah.
that. First, I would say there are different types of insurance. I'll stress it again. There are different. That's one. Then two, even with this multiple array of insurance policies, there are what you have called the compulsory ones. Now, under the compulsory insurance, the enumerated motto is that if I'm to ask you back, if you buy a car and you own a car, take off third party, first year, third year, fourth, fifth, 10th year, and then nothing happens to you. You can't go back to the insurance company and say, well, nothing has happened to me, give me back my money. Or you can't tell the government, you are the one that made them, you said is compulsory, I need to do. But for the past 10 years, I've not hit anybody. So give me back my money.
Yeah.
So, of course, it doesn't work that way. So I'm trying to segment it. For compulsory insurance, it doesn't work that way. Now, going further, even for that compulsory insurance and other optional insurance. Now, if you've done a policy for a year, 2, 3, 4, 5, at some point, there's this relationship that you would have built with the company, and that relationship should be able to now make them give you what is to give you further insurance cover at reduced prices. That is one. That's one of the benefits. It can give you those insurance cover at reduced premium. That's one. Two. Now, nobody knows when something will happen. That's just the truth. Now, if you after a while you now have a cover, they would know that okay, for the past how many years you've been paying your premium. So that would also affect their judgment to an extent, even in covering for you. Now, another twist to it is the fact that for 10 years you have not had any risk is almost impossible. There are other instances which may occur that looks like what was covered but was not covered. Those exceptions are what we call exclusions or exemptions, or so it looks like it, but it was not it. So naturally, you will run to them. My place was boggled. One of the conditions is that you must show evidence of breaking and breakout. Now, if honestly there was a theft in your premises, but you are not qualified for it because there was no evidence of a breaking and a breakout, but you have been paying your premium for the past 2, 3, 4 years, the company should be magnanimous enough to pay you what is called ex gratia, even when you've not qualified for a refund or an indemnity. They should be able to pay you ex gratia because you have been a loyal customer, you have been paying your premium. So now that you have something that, although does not meet the risk criteria, but it's close enough, they can come in to assist you. Now, lastly, what I would say is, remember I initially said there are an array of types of policy. Now, there are some policies which it combines both risk cover, pure risk, and then protection or investment. Sorry. So those ones that carry both risk and investment in their portfolio has it that after a certain number of years, if nothing happens, all what you have paid back for paid in and some interest will be given back to you. And this is very common in endowment plan. Just that there was no time I would have dealt deeply into endowment plan. For example, if an individual, an entrepreneur takes a 15 years plan, endowment plan, he keeps paying, year one, year two. God forbid anything, there's a particular policy in my company. If anything should happen to me at the second year, the sum assured that he would have contributed over 15 years, maybe 10 million, maybe less, will be paid to his beneficiaries, notwithstanding that he paid only two premiums of, let's say, 100,000 each. The sum assured of 2 million or 20 million, depending, will be paid to the beneficiary. But if it should survive the 15 years, those monies will be paid back to him, even with interest, because he enjoys cover during that time. And there are some other policies too that are purely risk based. For example, you can just decide, okay, I want to take up a particular policy. I want to insure for myself in 2021. You pay for it, and then what is capped on that policy is between 1st January 2021 and 31st January, with a premium of say 100,000. If anything happens to me, let the company pay my beneficiaries 20 million. So that's a pure risk policy. So within that 365 days, if anything happens to you within that time, genuinely, your family is covered. But if nothing happens, your 100,000 is gone. Your 100,000 is gone, not out of fraud, not out of cheat. You were undercover. It is a service, just like you had pointed out in the other question. It is a service, So for walking around with a cover, although not seen, that is the consideration for it. You have this rest of mind that you are covered, but that does not mean you will start running into the highway with moving traffic so that you can be hit down and your family compensated. I hope.
Okay. Yes, sure. You have done justice to that. It's quite clear. Thank you very much. I don't know if anybody else has a question. Kindly raise up your hand or you unmute yourself and speak. We have just less than 5 minutes to wrap up this webinar. Do you have any question, any comments?
I think Babajide.
Good afternoon. I have a question.
Okay, you're welcome, Babajide. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. My question is for our first speaker. I just need some kind of clarity on what he explained in his first answer about the outcry of churches. I want to ask, number one, does this law that they want to don't you understand that they want to monitor like the churches to see how they are spending their money and everything? Does it also, because I'm wondering why it's only the church that gave that large outcry like that. And also number two, if peradventure is any form of issue, maybe they want to change the head of a church. Is it that they can change the head of a church to like a Muslim or like to a government head? I don't really understand why the outcry was that much from only the churches. So just need clarity on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Barrister Tunji, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you for your question. In relation to the first part, that why is it only the churches that the outcry appears to come from? Well, to be honest, I can't tell you that it does not only apply to churches. It applies to all organizations that have trustees. Perhaps maybe because the churches are better organized and they have a leadership structure and they can now have like a pressure group to say we don't want this. Maybe that is why we are hearing from the churches. It applies to all organizations that have incorporated trustees. It's not only churches.
Okay, that is all NGOs, right?
Yes. Organizations that have that their provision, their constitution is that they should have incorporated trustees. So it could also include social clubs. It could also include charitable organizations and other organizations of that nature. So that is the essentially the answer to that. Then secondly, this is a new area of regulation. The law is not even yet in effect. So, but ordinarily, like I said earlier, it is supposed to only happen if there is a dispute and then there is a court judgment backing it up. So it is either in the issue of maybe there's someone has gone to court to challenge maybe some of the activities being done by the church, and then the court has now said that they are not happy with the current structure as it is, and then they would like the government to intervene and put in another structure. Basically, what happens is that, for example, if it were to be a company, a limited liability company or a public company, for example, basically in the past, the government would appoint a receiver to be able to handle the affairs of the company pending a change of ownership. So in this instance, my understanding is that the law has not been implemented yet, but it will probably be like an interim organization. It's not that they will hand it over to either a Muslim or to government. There will be an interim organization that will now look at the structure of the organization and say, okay, the structure of the organization, this is what it's supposed to have as trustees. So if the current trustees, for whatever reason, there has to be a change, then it makes sense that it will have to be something of similar structure. So I don't think it is possible for a church to now change and they now put a Muslim as the head of the organization. But that is an area that we are yet to test. But I don't see the possibility of that. It will have to be something similar in structure. It will have to be within that same organizational structure. Thank you for your question.
Okay. All right, sir. Thank you for that answer. Just a quick one. You said the law is not yet in effect. When is it scheduled to take effect?
Oh, okay. It has been signed into law by Mr. President on, I think, let me have a look
7th August.
Yes. But, the way our legislation works is that there has to be a transition from, this is a law that CAMA has been in effect 1990 for 30 years. So there is a gradual movement onto the new legislation. So Corporate Affairs Commission is actually the organization that implements this law. They are the ones that will implement it. So as of today now, Corporate Affairs Commission is still implementing CAMA 1990, but they have made provisions to graduate because of the technicalities involved. Electronic register, electronic registration. There are a lot of changes that have happened over the last few years due to electronic commerce and electronic development technology. For example, before, all our filing of registration of companies was by hand. You will take it to CAC office, they will stamp it on paper. But now, online, you can fill it out. And all the information you need is online. So, but because of these new changes, the Corporate Affairs Commission are gradually moving on to the new law. So from all indications, it shouldn't be too long. It will come in, but there will be adequate notice. But this new law may likely be in effect for another 20, 30 years. So it's not something that they will rush into. They have to make sure that it's properly done because the last one was done 30 years ago. So that's the answer to that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. That's very, very comprehensive. I think that's all the questions we can take for now. We are exactly 2 hours into the webinar. And by our policy, we don't intend to spend more than 2 hours so as to reduce virtual fatigue. So I want to really appreciate everyone that came up for this webinar. I want to really appreciate the facilitators, the Barrister Tunji and Barrister Eman Fon. You have been wonderful. Right from the first day we contacted you, you have been very faithful and committed to this webinar, and grateful for your showing up and for the massive content you have delivered to us. I'm sure that all the participants have learned a lot, and those that need further information or further consultation can always reach out to the facilitators. All right. If you don't have their contacts, you can always reach out to us at the resources. Just follow us on our social media handles, send us a DM, say you want to speak to the lawyer that was taking insurance, or I want to speak to the lawyer that was talking about compliance requirements. We will immediately connect you to the facilitator so that you can transact business with them. And it does not end here. For those of you that have been here as entrepreneurs, if any of your friends needs legal advice, needs company registration services, needs secretarial, company secretary services, or anything requiring legal representation, you can always reach out to us. We don't specialize in that, but we are connected with a lot of lawyers, including Barrister Manamfon and Barrister Tunji, who we can refer you to. So reach out to us and we will refer you to them, and you will be appropriately represented. Thank you very much, the facilitators. Thank you very much, the participants. So many people are asking about the recording of the event. In as much as you have registered, the recording will be sent to you. If you have not registered, check the chat box or check the link that you clicked to join this meeting. You're going to see the registration link there. Fill in the form, provide your name, your email, and the recording will be sent to you, including we are also going to be sending you the soft copy of the law itself so that you can have it in your library. And we'll send you any other information concerning the activities of the resources. In future, we'll be organizing seminars like this, not just on law, okay? It's anything around business, around technology, around the digital economy. So whenever we have seminars like this, we will always send out an invitation, and you are free to join us anytime, any day. All right? So to stay in touch with us, kindly follow us on our social media handles. Our website is leadresources.com.ng. You can follow our blog post, which we call Knowledge Leads, to stay informed of our activities. Thank you very much once again. I would like to say at this point, the webinar is officially brought to a close.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.